What is up? This is your LA in a minute, and as part of the LA Taco Neighborhood Project, we're going to be talking about Venice, a place that I thought I knew. But as I researched, the more I realized that every era in Venice had a distinct identity. From one of the most prosperous oil towns in America to Slum by the Sea to Silicon Beach. Venice is a town that has gone through more dramatic transformations than any other place in Los Angeles. Let's get into it. In 1839, the Venice as we know it was a marshy lagoon in a region called La Bayona, which was granted to the Machado and Talamantes families by the Mexican government as part of the Rancho La Bayona. That marshy lagoon area was strategically used by the native Tongva and Gabrielino people for thousands of years up to that point for hunting and fishing. The land wasn't formally developed until 1905, when Abbot Kinney, who won the land in a coin flip, decided to turn the marshy lagoon into a 14-mile beach resort town. He was going to call it Venice of America, basing it on the Italian city of the same name. He had horses and wagons fill the lagoons and dredge the area in order to build a system of canals and gondolas, just like Venice, Italy. Tourists flocked and eventually became residents, building bungalows on the side of the canals. The success of early Venice inspired Kinney to keep building, and he built 3 piers, which included cafes, ballrooms, and many attractions. 1920 was a very difficult year for Venice of America, however, as Abbot Kinney passed away, and the finances and management were left in jeopardy. That same year saw a huge fire on the Windward Avenue Pier, which was the main source of income and employment in Venice of America. It was completely destroyed. By 1925, the finances were in such disarray that the roads, the water, and the sewage system badly needed repair. And in order to keep up with the growing population, Los Angeles needed a beach city within its city limits. So with the approval of Venice voters, the town of Venice was annexed to Los Angeles in 1926. As the Depression overtook America and Los Angeles by 1929, the finances of Venice were still rough. And the Ohio Oil Company came in and started digging. And they struck oil, and gold fever commenced. Oil fever completely took over Venice, and within 3 years, it looked like this. Wow. The era of Venice of America was basically forgotten. They even began to fill in the canals and paved over waterways, making roads and traffic circles, which still exist today. There were environmental and safety issues with oil waste flooding the remaining lagoons and schools by the oil wells starting to shut down. Once they drained all the oil, Venice was left in neglect, and by the early 1950s, it was called the Slum by the Sea. That said, the low rents attracted a diverse group of immigrants, as well as young counterculture artists, writers, and poets. Venice became one of the main enclaves of the beat movement in the 1950s. Coffee shops, cafes, jazz clubs, poetry readings abounded. Venice began to have the flavor of modern Venice. By the 1970s, Venice was known as an artist community. Buildings all around town were covered with murals. The boardwalk was live. Street artists, vendors, musicians, bodybuilders, palm readers. Venice was attracting visitors from around the world. It was also attracting a gang element and was actually one of the most gang-infested cities in Los Angeles during that era. Through it all, Venice remained a tourist magnet and became known for some very colorful characters. In the early 2000s, the Venice boardwalk began to change again into a little bit more commercial outpost. Gentrification ensued. This time, the relatively low rents attracted a different type of demographic. By the 2010s, Venice became known as Silicon Beach, home to some of the brightest tech minds, tech companies, and tech architecture of this generation. And unfortunately, the modern story of Venice would not be complete without telling the story of the unhoused, which became a major hot-button issue, especially during COVID. Venice today really is the result of some of the most dramatic transformations of any city in Los Angeles history. And it's going to be exciting to see what the future transformations hold in Venice. All right, LA, it's been a minute.